never heard the term before, I'm going to give you a very basic definition. Human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery where people profit from the control and exploitation of others. Now, when I talk about human trafficking, I get many different responses to exactly what human trafficking is. I get people who say, I know what human trafficking is. I watched the movie Taken. Now, although there are some truths to the movie Taken, it's for entertainment purposes, so it should be treated as such. Aside from that, I get people who tell me I should focus on India or Cambodia, and that trafficking does not happen in America. Now, although it is true that it does happen in these places, and it's true that we should combat it, it's true everywhere. In fact, two of the major reasons why human trafficking is so hard to combat is because not only does it vary in how it happens or as it's executed, but also that it doesn't just happen on the other side of the world in one small location. It's everywhere, including right here in Dayton. Right now, as I am talking to you, someone is being trafficked. Ever seen this image? What about this one? These are two of the many different images that flood the airwaves and social media and get the likes and shares. They're meant to show you the pain, the sorrow, the despair that make up the life of a human trafficking victim. They're supposed to make you, the seer, want to do something about it. Do you? It gets to the point where people believe they have never seen a human trafficking victim or survivor because this is what they are looking for. So I'm going to show you the image of this little child right here who grew up in Ohio, was born into a Christian family with two loving Christian parents. They had a love for Polly Pocket toys back when they were this small, and they loved to tell jokes. But as they grew up with that life, they also grew up with the secret that at 5 years old, the age in this picture, they were sexually assaulted by a member of their distant family until they were 14. Then at 14 years old, they met a man who groomed them and grew close to them, and upon finding out about their past, used it against them and sold them at 15 years old. This is an image of me, the year everything started, and I have survived many different types of abuse, including human trafficking. On March 14th, 2013, 582 days ago, I was given my freedom. Now, I talk to people like you to try and bring about a change because you see, I am one of thousands of Ohioans that are trafficked every year, not to include the millions that are trafficked worldwide. Let's get some facts. The average age of entry into commercial sexual slavery is 13 years old, and this surpasses gender, ethnic background, race. Every 30 seconds, a child is trafficked. That means that by the time I finish this talk, an average of 18 children will have been trafficked. That's in Ohio alone. Now you're probably wondering, how could this happen? Truth is, it happens in part because some traffickers, pimps, johns, whatever you want to call the perpetrators, are smart, and underestimating them can lead to tragic consequences. Aside from that is the fact that our language, attitude, perspective of what we can do, talk of victims and survivors, idea of a universal-looking perpetrator, and ultimately silence is what allows for all of this to continue. But I'm going to tell you about how this happens, how it happened to me. But before I do, I want all of you to do something for me. I want you to stand. So everybody to your feet. Okay. I want you to raise your right hand. Okay. Shake hands with the person on the side of you. Either side is all right. Okay, now sit down. You did exactly what I told you to do. Why? If I walked up to you on the street and I told you to stand, raise your right hand, shake hands with the person next to you, now sit down, would you do it? Not likely. It's because right now I'm on this stage, and in this moment, you can trust that I'm not going to do anything to harm you. What you just did is a small taste of what is known as grooming. A definition for grooming, aside from to keep oneself clean, is to prepare or train someone for a particular purpose or task. When people think about human trafficking, they think that people are solely kidnapped, that if you were trafficked, you have to have been kidnapped. But I wasn't kidnapped. Many of the survivors I know weren't kidnapped. We were groomed. Now, I was groomed when I was 14 years old, and it happened in my church life. I met the man who would traffic me at a church youth conference, and I thought he was a youth pastor. He grew close to me and groomed me and did exactly most of what I just did to you. I trusted him. But when that trust was violated, I was threatened. That's where grooming leads to. Human trafficking is talked about in a victimizing way. I'm not a victim. I remember the first time that I was sold, and I was sitting in the back seat of the car, watching the Cincinnati skyline go by through the window. That was the night that I realized that my life was no longer my own. But life continued. I went off to college and was abused and sold even more because I was no longer around my family or my parents. I didn't have people who noticed. It wasn't until I had law enforcement and some friends who knew exactly what human trafficking was and did something to give me my freedom. But I didn't know at that time that what I was getting was my freedom. But once I found out that that's what I was getting, I have wanted to do something about it. That's why I'm here. I want to abolish human trafficking, but I can't do that. The organizations in Dayton, Ohio can't do that. The organizations in the world can't do that until everybody starts talking about it. We as a society, we put human trafficking up here as an abstract concept that we don't want to deal with on a daily basis. And then when someone like me tells their story, it can be hard because the community doesn't accept us as people because it's uncomfortable. The story itself is accepted. It's a good feeling to hear me say that I am free, and that's what everybody wants to hear. But if I tell you that your mom, your sister, your brother, your coworker, your neighbor, your friend, a stranger is being trafficked, and they need you to do something, it's an uncomfortable feeling. Human trafficking is talked about in a victimizing way, with victimizing language. We need to learn to accept those who have been trafficked not as victims, but as survivors. People think that I talk about human trafficking too much. Truth is, I need all of you to start. Traffickers build on silence, both of those who they use and abuse, but also the silence of society. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about what human trafficking is. Let's talk about bringing it into it and act on that. Let's be more willing to offer employment to survivors who have records, because believe it or not, the criminalization of the victim of a crime further stigmatizes that person and creates future barriers to employment and housing. Bottom line is, in order to bring about a change, we have got to change our language. We've got to change our attitude. And we've got to change our perspective on what it means to be involved in combating human trafficking. We have got to speak about it. Thank you.